The identity of the one you should not have killed, the vengeful spirit of Ultimate Custom Night, has been a long-going debate in the franchise for years. Some people think it's Cassidy, others think it's Andrew. Some even think it's David Murray. But today, I'm going to propose a new idea, one that I have not seen anyone ever consider as to the identity of the one you should not have killed.
Hello? Hello?
That's right. I'm proposing that the true identity of the one you should not have killed from Ultimate Custom Night is none other than the very first voice we ever hear in the entire series, Ralph, aka the phone guy. So what could lead me to think that Ralph could be the vengeful spirit? Well, it all starts with the week before the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game. In the week before, we meet Ralph, the phone guy, whose voice we hear throughout the entirety of the first 3 games. We find out many things about Ralph in this novel. We find out he has been working at Freddy's for so long that he can barely remember when he started, and he is a single father raising his daughter Coppelia. We all know how this story goes. During Ralph's final week as a security guard for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, he is killed during his shift and stuffed into an animatronic suit. But is that really all there is to Ralph's story? Whatever happened to Ralph? Where did he end up after his final shift? Well, I think he might have ended up in none other than the Golden Freddy suit inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Don't believe me? Well, take a look at this ending in the week before, where it picks up right after Ralph's final phone call ends during FNAF 1. Ralph wakes up, but he can't move. Something is wrong. He realizes he's in some kind of repair shop behind the main stage. I'm okay, you wonder. Something smells bad. It might be you. It's me. Why can't you move your head? Your hands? I'm not okay. All your choices have led you here. You're out of options. The only thing you can do is wait. Ralph finds himself inside of an animatronic, but the interesting thing here is what he says upon realizing it. It's me, a phrase commonly associated with Golden Freddy. Now, it's me is spoken a lot in this book. By Golden Freddy, yes, but also the other animatronics. So Ralph saying it's me by itself doesn't mean he's Golden Freddy. But this is where we turn to FNAF 1. On night 5 of FNAF 1, despite the death of Ralph from the previous night, we receive one final phone call. Only it's not the awkward, comforting voice of Ralph over the phone. Instead, it's a bunch of garbled animatronic speech. But within this garbled speech, we can hear a very specific sound. Golden Freddy's voice. But why would Golden Freddy leave a message for us on the phone? Seems random. Until you realize that if Ralph was a spirit now within Golden Freddy after being stuffed into him, this could be him trying to communicate with Mike from beyond the grave through the only way he knows how, through the phone. Now, let's move over to Ultimate Custom Night. It's heavily implied that Golden Freddy is the one responsible for the things going on in this game. The very last cutscene is of him twitching in a void. He's the only character that can't have the death coin used on him. And in the mobile port of the game, Golden Freddy is even displayed on the loading screen, further implying his importance. But now that we've established a connection between the characters of Ralph and Golden Freddy, I think this makes the character of the Vengeful Spirit a lot more interesting. Of course, one of the biggest questions that could come to mind when discussing Ralph possibly being the one you should not have killed was how could Ralph be considered a victim of William Afton? After all, he was killed by the animatronics, not William, right? Or was he? Let's take a look at the character roster for Ultimate Custom Night. Actually, let's talk about the theme of this main menu first. Isoptrophobia, the fear of one's own reflection. This roster of characters in Ultimate Custom Night are all the sins of William Afton, his own dark deeds being reflected back at him in a form of vengeful spite for all the pain he caused over the years. So I think it's very interesting that in this roster full of characters meant to represent Afton's misdeeds, one of those characters is none other than the phone guy. Ralph being on this roster could imply that in some way, shape, or form, William Afton is responsible for the unfortunate death of the phone guy. But how could he be? Afton wasn't even around when Ralph died. In the week before, something interesting Ralph mentions is another employee he seems to have some kind of relationship with. A person Ralph calls Dave from Maintenance. Now, for some of you, the name Dave might raise some alarm bells in your head, as it should, because the name Dave has been used by one specific character in this franchise, William Afton. In the Silver Eyes novel, William Afton, years after the missing children's incident, returns to work at Freddy's, pretending to be an employee under the alias Dave Miller. Considering Afton has a history of using aliases both in the books and in the movie, and one of those names specifically being Dave, it could very well be possible that Dave from Maintenance is none other than William Afton, working under the guise of an employee. Something I want to touch on really quick is when it comes to Ralph's demise. It's heavily implied in the week before that Ralph isn't actually dead after the animatronics attack him. What do I mean by this? Well, when Ralph wakes up inside of the animatronic he's stuffed into, he comments that something smells bad, only to realize it's him, which at first glance could imply that he's literally dead. However, Ralph can't be dead, because he's still able to smell, meaning his nose is still working. He's still a human being, although he's probably in the process of dying, which might explain why he smells. And Ralph managing to initially survive getting stuffed into a suit actually lines up with what he says at the end of his phone call on night 4.
Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm gonna try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. Yeah, I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
And as we read in the week before, the final line says that all Ralph can do now is wait, hoping somebody will come check on the suits and find him. He's doing his best to hold out hope that somebody will come and rescue him from the suit. And what if somebody did find him? But not just anybody. What if the person who found Ralph was his good old friend Dave? Potentially William Afton. Now, why would Dave be the one to find Ralph in a back room? Well, Dave is specifically a maintenance worker, according to Ralph, and when Ralph wakes up, he finds himself in an animatronic repair shop in the back of the building. If any type of worker would go back into that room, it would be a maintenance worker like Dave. So what if Dave did find Ralph, clinging to life inside the suit? But Dave, or rather, William Afton, doesn't save Ralph. It's established very quickly at the beginning of FNAF 1 that Fazbear Entertainment will cover up any disappearances to protect their reputation.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life. Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for damage to property or person. Upon discovering that damage or death has occurred, a missing person report will be filed within 90 days or as soon as property and premises have been thoroughly cleaned and bleached and the carpets have been replaced, blah blah blah.
So what if when Dave finds Ralph shelved into the Golden Freddy suit inside the back room, instead of saving Ralph, he instead trips the spring locks inside the suit, causing them to crush Ralph within the suit, killing him completely. Now, can I prove that these events even happened? Actually, I think I can. Let's go back to Ultimate Custom Night's roster. Has anyone found it interesting that out of all the characters, Ralph the Phone Guy is specifically the very last character on the roster? I feel like both the first and last spots of the Ultimate Custom Night roster would be reserved for very specific characters. For example, Freddy is the first character on the roster since he's the main star of the franchise. Why then does Ralph get to be the final character on the entire roster? Well, I think Ralph being last becomes relevant when you realize what the final cutscene of Ultimate Custom Night is. Golden Freddy twitching in a void, shaking violently. And does this scene of Golden Freddy twitching seem familiar to anyone? Well, to me it does. To me it looks very similar to the scene of Springtrap twitching in the FNAF 3 trailer. And we're later shown that this is actually William Afton's death scene in Follow Me, where he gets spring-locked. This could imply the scene we are looking at in this final cutscene is Golden Freddy twitching during a springlock failure. And if we connect Golden Freddy being the final character in the cutscenes to Ralph being the final character in the roster, and the fact that he's implied to be stuffed into Golden Freddy, this makes the idea that William Afton killed Ralph by tripping the spring locks even more possible. This scene is William being shown how he killed Ralph. The ultimate isoptrophobia. Ralph is literally mirroring William Afton, both shaking violently in a springlock failure. And that's not all. Let's talk about some of the other things we learn about the one you should not have killed in Ultimate Custom Night. First, it's heavily implied by the dialogue in UCN that the Vengeful Spirit is male, which Ralph obviously fits that description.
He's here and always watching, the one you shouldn't have killed.
But more than that, it's implied that the torment that the Vengeful Spirit is inflicting on William is a torment that the spirit themselves is familiar with.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
This torment that William is experiencing is being terrorized by the animatronics, something Ralph would be extremely familiar with considering he was a 22-time employee of the month according to the week before. All those endless shifts being terrorized by those animatronics as a security guard, now being turned on William Afton as a form of revenge. And that is my theory on Ralph being the identity of the one you should not have killed in Ultimate Custom Night. Okay, so now that that's over with, let's talk. I'm gonna be honest, this theory is mostly just a fun crackpot theory I made up, and I'm not actually of the mindset that the phone guy is the Vengeful Spirit in UCN. But I still think it's a really fun idea that I created, so I wanted to make it into a video for you all to enjoy. Because if you can't have fun sometimes and you're making theories, what's the point, you know? Anyways, I promise a more serious theory will be coming very soon. I will see you guys on the flip side.